In the history of Hollywood, there are stars who demand credit for everything. They want their name above the title. They want the biggest trailer. They want the world to know that they are the genius behind the magic. But then, there are the professionals. The men who care more about the mission than the glory. In the summer of 1993, the Arizona desert was burning, and so was the production of a movie called Tombstone. It was supposed to be a masterpiece. It had the best script in Hollywood. It had Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, and the legendary Charlton Heston. It had a budget of $25 million, but 3 weeks into filming, Tombstone was a disaster. The original director had been fired. The script was too long. The schedule was impossible. Disney, the studio funding the picture, was 24 hours away from pulling the plug. They were ready to send everyone home, write off the loss, and let the movie die in the dust. The crew was packing their bags. The dream was over. And that is when the lead actor, a man named Kurt Russell, walked into a private room with the studio executives. He didn't go in there to quit. He didn't go in there to complain. He made them a secret offer. An offer that would save the movie, create one of the greatest westerns of all time, and cement his legacy as one of the few true men left in a town of children. He told them, "I will direct this movie. I will fix the script. I will get it done. But you can never put my name on it." For 30 years, the truth was whispered in back rooms and shared among stuntmen. But today, the silence ends. This is the untold story of how Kurt Russell ghost-directed Tombstone, saved Val Kilmer's career, and proved that a real legend doesn't need the credit to know he won. To understand why Tombstone was such a nightmare to make, you first have to understand the war that was happening before the cameras even rolled. In the early 90s, the Western genre was dead. Clint Eastwood had given it a final, perfect goodbye with Unforgiven, and nobody thought there was any money left in cowboys. But two scripts about the same man Wyatt Earp were circulating in Hollywood at the same time. The first one was owned by Kevin Costner. Costner was the king of Hollywood at the time. He had just won Oscars for Dances with Wolves. He was untouchable. His project, simply called Wyatt Earp, was going to be a massive 3-hour epic. He had the money, the studio backing, and the ego to match. The second script was Tombstone. It was grittier, faster, meaner. It was written by a man named Kevin Jarre, a brilliant screenwriter who was obsessed with the Civil War era. Costner wanted to kill the competition. He used his power to try and block Tombstone from getting made. He locked down all the major studios. He told his friends not to fund it. He wanted to be the only Wyatt Earp in town, but he made a mistake. He underestimated the stubbornness of Kurt Russell. Russell read Kevin Jarre's script and fell in love. He loved the dialogue. He loved the brotherhood of the Earp brothers. He signed on immediately. And because Kurt Russell was attached, Val Kilmer signed on to play the dying gambler. Holliday. Suddenly, Tombstone wasn't just a script. It was a freight train. But as soon as they arrived in Arizona to start filming, the wheels fell off. The original director was the writer himself, Kevin Jarre. Now, writing a movie and directing a movie are two very different skills. Writing requires imagination. Directing requires command. Jarre was a brilliant writer, but on set, he was overwhelmed. He refused to cut his script. He wanted to film every single line of dialogue he had written. The movie was shaping up to be 4 hours long. The actors were miserable. The desert heat was 115 degrees. The costumes were authentic, wool-heavy, hot, and suffocating. And Jar was wasting time trying to get the perfect lighting on a horse while his actors stood in the sun. Melting Sam Elliott, who played Virgil Earp, later said, "We knew we were in trouble on day 3. The schedule was slipping. The budget was exploding. Disney executives flew down to the set, took one look at the dailies, and fired Kevin Jar on the spot. It was a tragedy. Jar had poured his soul into this story. But Hollywood is a business, not a charity. With no director, the production shut down. The cast and crew sat in their hotels, waiting for the call to go home. Kevin Costner's team was reportedly celebrating. It looked like Tombstone was dead, and Wyatt Earp would reign supreme. But Kurt Russell wasn't ready to go home. He knew that if production stopped for more than 48 hours, the Bond company would seize the assets, and the movie would be cancelled forever. He called up the studio heads. He told them, "Don't cancel it. I can fix this." But Disney had a rule. They wouldn't let an actor direct a $25 million movie. It was too risky. They needed a real director's name on the call sheet, so Kurt Russell came up with a plan. A plan that required zero ego and 100% discipline. He told them, "Go hire George P. Cosmatos." George P. Cosmatos was a Greek director known for action movies like Rambo, First Blood Part 2. He was a visually talented man, but he was known to be, let's say, difficult. He was loud. He was arrogant. But Kurt Russell knew something else about him. He knew Cosmatos would do exactly what he was told if the check was big enough. Kurt made a backroom deal with the studio. Cosmatos would be the frontman. He would yell, "Action," and cut. He would deal with the lighting and the camera crews. But every single creative decision, where to put the camera, how the actors should speak, which scenes to keep and which to cut, would come from Kurt Russell. Kurt later admitted in an interview, "I said to George, I'm going to give you a shot list every night. That's what we're going to shoot the next day." And George agreed. So began one of the most exhausting marathons in film history. Every morning, Kurt Russell would wake up at 4 a.m. He would write out the shot list for the day. He would meet with Cosmatos and hand him the instructions. Then, he would put on his costume, strap on his guns, and become Wyatt Earp. He would act in every scene, memorize lines that were being rewritten on the fly, and manage the egos of Val Kilmer and Michael Biehn. Asterisk when the sun went down and the other actors went to the bar to drink away the stress. Kurt Russell went to the editing room. He would sit with the editors until midnight, cutting the footage, rewriting the script for the next day, and fixing the mess they were in. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. Val Kilmer, who watched this happen, said, "Kurt is the sole reason Tombstone exists. He sacrificed himself for us, but the biggest sacrifice wasn't his sleep. It was his ego. When you are the star of a movie, and you are also the secret director, you have the power to make yourself look like a god. You can give yourself all the cool lines. You can make sure the camera is always focused on your face." Most actors would have done exactly that. Kevin Costner, in his version of Wyatt Earp, is in almost every single frame of the movie. It's the Kevin Costner show, but Kurt Russell understood something about storytelling that Costner missed. He looked at the footage and realized a hard truth. The most interesting character in the movie wasn't Wyatt Earp, it was Doc Holliday. Val Kilmer was giving the performance of a lifetime. He was weird, sweaty, dangerous, and hilarious. Every time Kilmer was on screen, the movie came alive. So, Kurt Russell did the unthinkable. He started cutting his own lines. He took scenes that were written for Wyatt Earp and gave them to Doc Holliday. He told the camera operators, "Don't look at me. Look at Val." There is a famous scene where the Earp brothers are walking down the street, and Wyatt is supposed to have a long, heroic monologue. "Kurt, cut it," he said. "I don't need to say anything. I just need to look at them." He stripped his own character down to the bone. He made Wyatt Earp stoic, quiet, and reserved, so that Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday could shine brighter. He allowed his co-star to steal the movie. Why? Because he knew it was better for the film. While Costner was polishing his own ego across town, making a 3-hour vanity project, Kurt Russell was sharpening a knife. He was making a movie that moved fast, hit hard, and didn't waste a second. But the universe wasn't done testing him yet. Halfway through the shoot, the cast and crew were breaking down. Bill Paxton, who played Morgan Earp, was dealing with personal tragedies. Sam Elliott was fighting with the new director, Cosmatos, who was screaming at the crew to maintain the illusion that he was in charge. One day, on location, a massive lightning storm rolled in. The crew scrambled to cover the equipment. The stress was so high that people were snapping. The studio called Kurt again. They said, "You're still over budget. We need to cut 20 pages from the script. Now, 20 pages. That's 20 minutes of the movie." The scene on the chopping block was the montage showing the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday rising to power, the glory days before the tragedy. Kurt fought back. He knew that if you cut the happiness, the tragedy at the end wouldn't hurt. You have to love these men before you can watch them bleed. So, he made another deal. He promised to shoot the scenes faster. He promised to get it done in one take if he had to. There is a story that on one particularly bad day, George Cosmatos, the puppet director, started screaming at a young camera assistant. He was bullying the kid, taking out his frustration on someone who couldn't fight back. Kurt Russell, fully dressed as Wyatt Earp, stopped the scene. He didn't scream. He didn't throw a fit. He just walked over to Cosmatos, leaned in, and whispered something in his ear. Nobody knows exactly what was said, but the screaming stopped, and it never started again. That is the difference between a boss and a leader. A boss yells. A leader protects. Finally, the movie was done. Kurt Russell had dragged the production across the finish line through sheer force of will. Tombstone hit theaters in December 1993. 6 months later, Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp was released. The comparison was brutal. Costner's movie was beautiful, epic, and boring. It felt like a history lesson. Critics respected it, but audiences fell asleep. It cost $63 million to make and flopped at the box office. Tombstone. Tombstone exploded. It was electric. It was quotable. Val Kilmer became an instant icon. The line, "I'm your Huckleberry," was printed on t-shirts across America. Men loved it because it wasn't about history, it was about brotherhood. It was about standing your ground when the world tells you to run. But here is the most incredible part of the story. When the reviews came out, critics praised George P. Cosmatos for his tight direction. They praised the vision of the director. And Kurt Russell, he said nothing. He didn't go to the press. He didn't write a tell-all book. He didn't complain that he did all the work while another man took the trophy. He let Cosmatos have the credit. He let the movie stand on its own. It wasn't until years later, after Cosmatos had passed away, that Kurt finally admitted the truth in an interview. And even then, he was humble about it. He said, "I promised George I wouldn't say anything while he was alive." He kept his word. A promise made in the desert, kept for a decade. In a modern world filled with influencers, TikTok stars, and celebrities who tweet every thought in their head, the story of Tombstone feels like a myth. We are used to people doing the minimum work and demanding the maximum credit. We are used to leaders who blame their teams when things go wrong. But Kurt Russell reminds us of an older code. A code that says, the work is what matters. He saved a movie that everyone gave up on. He saved the jobs of hundreds of crew members. He gave his co-star the role of a lifetime, and he did it all from the shadows, without asking for applause. Val Kilmer put it best. He said, "Kurt Russell is the most responsible, professional, and generous actor I have ever worked with. He is the man." So the next time you watch Tombstone and you see Wyatt Earp walking through the fire, looking calm while hell breaks loose around him, remember that you aren't just watching acting, you are watching the real man. Because true legends don't need to tell you they are in charge. You can feel it. If you believe in the values that men like Kurt Russell stood for: loyalty, discipline, and silence, then you are in the right place. This channel is dedicated to the stories Hollywood wants you to forget. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications, because we are just getting started. And there are many more legends who have been silent for too long. Welcome to the Brotherhood. Welcome to Untold Silent Legends.